The Boston Celtics are on the verge of being NBA champions. Um, this is a phrase that is my worst nightmare as a Heat fan. I know this is a channel where I'm giving my fully unbiased opinion. This is not the Heat Report where, I'm a biased Heat fan. I'm an objective NBA fan on this channel. So I'm just gonna give you my thoughts about what I think about the Boston Celtics. A Heat fan's perspective on the Boston Celtics, man. Let me just say that. Obviously, I gotta take every single ounce of bias out of me for this. And if Celtics fans are in the comment section below, feel free to troll me, troll my team, troll anybody. You guys deserve this championship, man. It hurts me to say it. You guys have been the best team all year. And they have, man. They have. If anybody is in the comment section doubting it, they have. And you got to give their front office a ton of credit because after last season where, the Heat embarrassed you guys on your home floor. I mean, we beat them by like 20 points in Game 7. And they took that personally. I mean, the Boston Celtics really took that personally because they went and upgraded the roster so much in the offseason. They addressed every single weakness that the Miami Heat exploited of theirs last season. The Miami Heat had a ton of success last season playing zone. You know what they did? And as a Heat fan, I am almost sure, 100% sure, that they did this because of the Heat zone. Again, that doesn't make it's because I'm giving them credit. I'm not saying the Heat made them do this or anything. I'm just saying they deserve credit because they saw what the Heat did to them last season and they fixed that because Porzingis is a zone neutralizer. And I've seen it firsthand as a Heat fan. Whenever we try to zone the Boston Celtics, this season, they were cooking us. Last season, we had a success because they didn't, their center was Robert Williams. He didn't space the floor like that. So he was just sitting at the dunker spot. So the paint was clogged. They couldn't get to the middle. But when Porzingis is, playing in his zone, I mean, you can't leave him open. So I'm almost certain that they added Porzingis to combat teams playing zone against them. Drew Holiday, I mean, listen, I don't know what Portland was doing, but they got finessed in that trade. I mean, the Celtics traded for Drew Holiday, and they traded away Robert Williams and Malcolm Brogdon. Robert Williams has not played a single game this season, and Malcolm Brogdon only has 2 to 3 years left as a good point guard. And on top of that, they traded away Marcus Smart, who's been the heart and soul of that team for years, and who was a defensive player of the year on that team, and they did not care. They saw that he had a bad series against Miami. He had a bad playoffs overall in 2023. And you know what they said? They were like, you know what, Marcus, we love you. You're still a Celtic legend or whatever. I haven't seen Celtics fans dislike Marcus Smart. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, maybe a few here and there, but majority of the Celtics fan base likes Marcus Smart as a player, as a person. Even like as a player, he's been the heart and soul of that team for years now. And the minute they saw him declining with his play, they were like, you know what? We need to upgrade at the point guard position. We're going to get Drew Holiday, who's similar to Marcus Smart in a lot of ways, but he's a lot better than him. As a playmaker, I think he's a better defender, and he's definitely a better scorer. And they were like, Marcus, we love you, but we want to get better, so we're going to make this trade. And you know what they did? They did not let emotions or ego or any of that get in the way. They traded away a guy who was a franchise cornerstone, a guy who was loved by the fan base. And an unpopular move, actually, because a lot of Celtics fans did not like the trade at the time. I remember I had a few friends who were like, man, I want Marcus Smart to be a Celtics lifer and stuff like that. They did not care about that. They were like, you know what, we need to get better. And they made this trade, and they got Drew Holiday, and they upgraded that point guard position, and they upgraded the center position by a wide margin because Kristaps Porzingis, they got him for peanuts, man, absolute peanuts. And you got to give him credit, man. I mean, Brad Stevens was ruthless in the offseason. He did not care about anything. He was just like, I got to upgrade this team. I got to fix the weaknesses that were exploited by other teams like the Heat and, whoever else they played in the playoffs. The zone was one. So, I saw it firsthand. Whenever we tried to zone them up, they were able to find Porzingis or find one of their shooters. And another thing that they addressed was to get a lot of guys to space the floor. They implemented Sam Hauser into the rotation. They got Drew Holiday, who shot 43% from 3. Derek White improved his shot. Peyton Pritchard has always been a good shooter. Al Horford. I mean, everybody in their lineup can shoot. Everybody. You know, if you look from top to bottom, their whole starting lineup can shoot. Their 3 players coming off the bench can shoot. Their whole lineup is able to space the floor. So they strategically did that to make sure that any team who will try to get the ball out of Jason Tatum's or Jaylen Brown's hands, they will be made to pay by doing that. And Brad Stevens had a vision, and that was a really good one, because Jason Tatum was trapped, blitzed, doubled a lot of the times by the Heat and other teams. And when Jason Tatum has gotten doubled this, postseason, first of all, his playmaking and poise has improved a lot. And second of all, he has found the open man, and their shooting has been a lot better than it was last season. Last season, they had a couple of guys who weren't able to space the floor, like, Robert Williams and stuff like that on the team, playing heavy minutes. So this season, they replaced all these guys with plus shooters, and that was another addition that they made. They made improvements in shooting. They made improvements in the center spot to break the zone whenever it was played against them, not just by the Heat but by any other team. And they had guys who made individual strides, like a Derek White improved, Jason Tatum improved his playmaking and his defense, and Jaylen Brown improved his handle, and he improved his his defense, because I thought, and during the first part of Jaylen Brown's career, he was a really good defender, and for some reason he took a dip, and then he just got back to this really good defensive level. So, Jaylen Brown improved that part of his game as well. So, yeah, I mean, they had a perfect mix of, talent being added, weaknesses that were being filled, and they had individual guys improving from last year, and that's why they were the best team of the NBA by far this season. Now, do I think they could have been beaten by different teams? Like the Mavericks, I think were just a terrible matchup for them. I'm not really sure why anybody really had confidence in Dallas winning this series. Like, the Celtics are just a terrible, terrible matchup for Dallas, because, they have guys who you can put on, Luka Doncic and make it tough for him, or Kyrie Irving and make it tough for him. And on the other hand, Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving weren't going to be able to stay in front of anybody. So, yeah, I mean, I do think, like, the Nuggets, I thought, blew the whole chance of winning a championship when they were messing around against Minnesota on their home floor. The Nuggets should have been in the finals to me, because the Timberwolves were way too inexperienced against the Mavs, and the Mavs were just way too, reliable on their role players, and defensively just inept at the guard position against the Boston Celtics. And you got to give Boston credit, man. I mean, Joe Mazzulla, I will say, has turned me into a believer of him, because early on, I was a doubter. I'm not going to lie. Like, I was like, can this guy really coach? I haven't really seen it, because, when you're given a ton of talent, it's very easy to say that, oh my God, like, this guy is just given a ton of talent. Like, anybody can coach this team. You and I can coach this team. And that's what I was thinking at first. I was like, what does Joe Mazzulla really even do? I knew he was always like an analytics guy, but I never really knew how good he was, or even if he was good at all. But he really changed my opinion of him. And I got to say, I was wrong about Joe Mazzulla. That's the first thing I would say. People will say that Joe Mazzulla had the best cards. He was dealt the best hand, and he had the best injury luck and stuff like that. And I will say that that's not entirely false. But what I will tell you is that even though Joe Mazzulla had the best team, you still have to make it work. It's easy to have all the talent on paper, but look at the Suns, man. The Suns had a really talented team, and they just collapsed in the first round. They got swept. So it's not easy to manage egos. It's not easy to come up with a game plan that works for every single player that you have. You can have a lot of talent, but if you don't have the game plan that works to maximize the potential of the talent, then you're really just wasting the talent. And Joe Mazzulla had a really good, offense, where he was, it was predicated on driving kick, penetrate and pitch, swing, find the open man, pass you to death until you find an open shot. And he was destroying teams with that. And defensively, they had individual guys who would take pride in their matchups. You had a rim protector in Porzingis, you had 2 elite wings in Brown and Tatum defensively, and you had 2 elite guards in Holiday and White. So none of their starters were liabilities defensively, and all of their starters could shoot the ball. I mean, that's just an overpowered offense and defense, if you ask me. And Joe Mazzulla maximized that, to his best. And on top of that, he not only maximized the team, but he also had to deal with Kristaps Porzingis missing a chunk of time. I think he missed, 10 or 11 or 12 games this whole postseason. And in those 12 games, I think they were 11-1. I think they only lost one game, or they might have even been undefeated. I don't know, but yeah, man. I mean, it's very easy to say Joe Mazzulla just didn't do anything and doesn't really deserve any credit or whatnot, but he really, really coached well this playoffs, and I was able to see that. I don't really watch too many Celtics games or after they beat us, but after it got to the Eastern Conference Finals, I was able to see them, scheming the Pacers up, and especially in the finals, man. I mean, he's coached really, really well. His adjustments, his rotations have been spot on, and as a Heat fan, I always felt that whenever we played Boston, like whenever it got to the fourth quarter, like whenever it was a close game down the stretch, they always really seemed to me like a team that could panic a lot of the times, where like you could try to like rattle Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and they don't really have like a guy who could really calm them down and settle them. And obviously Drew Holiday has helped them do that, but I feel like ever since this season with this whole team, you haven't really been able to rattle the Boston Celtics down the stretch. Like they have been a really good closing team, and a team that has Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, who are two of the best closers in basketball. They have outplayed them down the stretch. So, listen, and the whole injury, excuse about, the Celtics played a bunch of depleted teams. I mean, that's what happens. I mean, when you're the number one seed, you're not going to be playing the best teams. You're going to be playing an 8 seed, and the Miami Heat are not a regular 8 seed. But as a Heat fan, I do admit that even if we were fully healthy, I don't think we would have won that series, man. I think the Celtics had really figured out how to play against the Miami Heat, and they really added pieces to help them beat the Miami Heat, like Porzingis, who was an absolute nightmare, to play against when you were playing zone against them. And not only that, they had, Porzingis injured for a while as well. And yeah, I really do think that they were just head and shoulders better than all the teams that they played. I mean, even if Donovan Mitchell played all his games, or Tyrese Halliburton played all his games, or Jimmy Butler played, or any of that, I really don't think the Boston Celtics would have lost. I mean, they probably would have lost more games in the series, but I don't think they would have lost, each of the series at all. So I really do think they were just the better team than everybody in the whole East, and potentially and probably the whole league too. I mean, I do think that Denver was the only one who really had a chance to stop them, but they, blew their chance by what they did against Minnesota. But yeah, I mean, Boston was really head and shoulders the best team in the NBA, and you got to give them a lot of credit for that. Listen, this is probably the last time I'll ever praise Boston in a video, because as a Heat fan, it's just not in my DNA to do so. But it is for a channel that, is a basketball loving channel. I love hoops at the end of the day. I'm an objective NBA fan. I'm not, one of these guys who, I know a lot of people will put their teams and be like, what, no matter what, I'm never going to give this team credit because my team means more to me. Nah, I'm not like that. I love the Heat and all, but I do appreciate good basketball. And, it's hard not to give the Celtics credit because they have been an absolute juggernaut and force all year long. And, I hope they don't win as nearly as many games next year. And I hope that this is their last championship for a long time. But you got to give it to them. They have played really well. They have coached really well, and their front office has done an excellent job with this roster. So let me know what you guys think about the Celtics, man. I'll see you later as always in the next video. Peace.